I have done this, and I do it. Actually, I do it now too. I let the team kind of pick their own team members. I trust my group enough to say, okay, you know what's going on. I love what you're all doing now. We just need to be able to do more. Can we get somebody else? Do you know anybody? Yeah, he'd be good for the team, or he'd be a good worker. It's like, okay, let's try him out. Hey, Chris G here, back again. Hard hat the CEO. It's been what 7 days, I guess, and now it's time to have another discussion. Last week, last episode, I got Kevin here, but episode, Kevin, we talked briefly about teams,
Mm.
and being the producer you are, you thought that would be a kind of a good topic to bring up today. So, what are you thinking about?
Somebody asked me the other day, we were talking about leadership, and I said, I think leadership is one of the hardest things ever of all time. I didn't know what I was signing up for, building a team, being one of the leaders. And we're blessed because we have an amazing team, but I know we've had people in the past where I feel like the team was holding us back, whether it
Yeah.
was capabilities or attitude, whatever it is. So I thought it would be cool to do an episode on, is your team holding you back? How do you know? What do you do? How many chances do you give someone before you move on? That was my thought for today.
Sure. I'm thinking also maybe next episode we could talk about how you're holding your team back.
I'm in. I love it.
It goes both ways. But yeah, let's talk about the team. I strongly believe that they had to all they have to play the game. They all be together, and one bad player can cause the other ones to be not as proficient as they should be.
Mm.
And you gotta. So when you were talking about leadership and teams, did they mention? Do you hear people complaining about other people?
Not on our team. No.
Yeah,
We're very lucky. And I think
sure.
we're good. I also want to own the fact that I think we're good leaders, and that makes a
Yeah.
difference, right?
Just out of curiosity, what size team you have?
We
How
have
people are?
19 people.
19 people. That's good. You know, I do like reading and studying and so forth. One article I read years ago that anything over 150 people, it's too big. And not too big, but you lose. That seems to be the number that your body, your mind, everybody can relate to, and kind of like a high school class. It's kind of how
Mm.
I kind of perceive it. And that's how I read into it. It's like, okay. And the thought was that if you can keep it under 150 people and be more efficient, you'll be more efficient. You'll be a better team. Everybody knows everybody. Um, Obviously, it has to be rank and file within that 150, but that's really a good way, a good number. Obviously, smaller is better with overhead these days and so forth. What? Well, we talking about AI. Me and my other business partner on the Prospect HQ, we talked about AI, and one of your biggest expenses is your labor, and you know that.
Of course.
And you have to decide what can you do with the people you have. Because I don't like layoffs. I hate layoffs. I don't mind firing somebody if they're not doing their job because I think it makes everybody happier. But you got to look at what can you do with people you have, and whether it be AI, whether it be software, tools, equipment, all that good stuff. It kind of plays a factor in that. But the team, if you have a working foreman as part of your team, I call it working foreman. If you have a team member that you delegate to, or your right hand person, I don't want to say man, but could be your right hand person, and you're able to talk to them about it. Um, I enjoy just talking about business philosophy in general. I guess that's why I'm a podcaster. But it's fun to delegate or go back and forth and pick people's brains for me. And you talk about what's your weakest link. I'm not trying to get rid of anybody, but and I talk about firing, yes, but before you fire somebody, find out what the deal is. Is it training? Then you're responsible. Train that person, or get training for them. Is it the equipment? Sometimes the newer guys get the hand me downs, and they're not as efficient as say the new equipment. Um, do a little research, obviously. Sometimes the people that bitch the most are the ones your problems anyway. So if they're
Yeah.
bitching about somebody else, maybe it's really not the other somebody else. It's really them, and that's hard to play too because we're all human. But how else could they hold you back?
Are there visual things that you see? Like how many How many chances do you give someone before something has to happen?
I've had discussion with human resource people before, and 3. And it sounds kind of like baseball, which it is. 3 strikes are out type thing. The first time everybody makes mistakes, that's just going to happen. And now there's a very little mistake, don't get me wrong, but just on a general discussion wise, everybody makes a mistake. Let's learn from that mistake and go on. Number 2, and again, that kind of really depends on how blatant it is, or sometimes even I've talked to guys about cost. Can you afford to have that happen again that second time? Can you afford that third time? The first time's just an accident or whatever. But and the second time is more of, all right, you ever had your first strike? We tried to train you, or we've given you what you think you need to make you better. Can you afford that third one? And if you can't, then maybe it is time for them to go. You might decide, you might even talk to your team before you replace that person. Do you need that person? How can that work? Bringing everybody together. What happened here? Or why did this happen? And it might not be a person. It just might be the team in general, that something's not jiving. Somebody's not communicating. I believe in training. And training, I think, needs in 3 phases. I've done studies on this, and I've done a lot of reading about it. You got to train. Some people learn by visual. Somebody learns by doing. And somebody learns by reading or studying. So you give them all 3, and that's what you had. It's just part of your training process. Have somebody show them how to do it, then have them do it right in front of that person. And if you really have to, just give them the written instructions. Here's a step-by-step of what you just did. And okay, you've proven to me that you can do it. That could be part of your process when you first hire somebody. A hiring book, if you want. That really can depend on the size of the company. But I would say if you went over, well, I don't even say 5, but some people say you have 1 person employed. That's good because you plan to grow, and it's easier to start it now than later. And I agree with that too. 3 is a good number, but maybe, and I said it depends. Are they late to work? Can you tolerate being late to work? I don't know. And it depends on the person and the job. So I don't mean that facetiously, and I know you got a big grin on your face. I used to be a big stickler for coming on time, and I still am on particular jobs or positions. But that doesn't necessarily. I had a employee, Sandy, and she was great, but Sandy could not make it on time. Just it was not in her to do it. And somebody said one day, "Why don't you just get rid of her?" And I said, "Well, because Sandy might be late 30 minutes, but she stays an hour and a half after everybody goes home." And that's the truth. And I decided that her being coming in late 30 minutes is not affecting her job. Now, that really pertains to her job. Did not affect her job. And she worked overtime anyway and never got paid for it. It was a salary job. Now, if somebody's waiting on you, depending on you to show up so they can go home, that's a whole different category. And, not all construction companies, not all have more shifts than one. And if you do, that's great. If you're a highway construction person, you probably do. If you've got a contract on a commercial building, you probably do. It depends on what you got going on. But if somebody's dependent on you, then I think time's an issue. And we used to have a 3 strikes are out. I mean, late once, okay. Late twice, you got your warning. And now, one more time, you're done. But one of the things that we talk about holding people back. And I guess what you need to do is define what holding back means. Just because you think, now you're the boss, what you think is the most important, don't get me wrong, but you need to define that to other people, what you mean by holding back is. Or do you have goals, or do you have goals or dreams of where you need to be, or what you think should be done in a certain day? Now, either you're too ambitious and somebody's sitting down and talk to you about, hey, man, that's unrealistic. Or somebody needs to get their act together and get a little second gear. But somebody needs to understand, and it goes back to the communication thing. I talk a lot about communication. You got to tell them. And maybe they don't understand that that's where you thought you should be. Or maybe they can say, okay, well, I can do that, but I need this, or whatever it is. Tell you, I know a company, who I've consulted before, and he did a great job. He would go and he'd ask his guys. He said, "Hey, I can buy this tool," and it was a $3,000 tool. And he goes, "I'll buy it per crew if you guys think it'll speed you up." And they looked at it and they said, it's nice, but I don't think you need to spend that $3,000. And that's a good team. That is a good group of guys who, they realized it. They appreciated the boss asking it. And the boss was asking it for a purpose of making more efficient. But if they didn't think it was necessary, then no, it's not going to save time. But that's a good habit to get into. Just communicating and figuring out who needs what.
When you're putting together a crew, if we were thinking of like a sports team, what are you looking for? Humility, I'm sure, has to be one. What are the character traits that you're looking for in the crew?
Self-motivation at first, because you don't want to be there babysitting them. And I talked about I'm not a micromanager, don't want to be a micromanager. And I think micromanaging belittles people if you got the right people. So self-motivation, somebody willing, you got to have one leader in the leader position, whether it be the working foreman or the guy in charge, whoever it is, somebody needs to be able to turn to somebody. You got to have a chief and somebody respects. You want everybody telling the truth. You just want one spokesperson type thing.
Yeah.
I have an example where I've had a crew one time, and my foreman, and I explained to him, and sometimes I said, "Man, you got to listen to what the other guys say too." Sometimes, and they give an example, a reason, but just give them a reason back why it's your way is best. And sometimes it don't really matter as long as you get it done. And one guy was complaining, "Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it this way?" So finally, the other two guys on the crew said, "Because that's how he wants it done. Just do it. It's not going to change anything." But they know, just get the job done. That's what's most important. Not going to affect you in any way other than do it this way. If you want to know why, I mean, that's a different question. And Junior's, he'd already told him the reason. I mean, it was going on and on and on. It's like other people just get tired of hearing it, and they'll step up. And that peer pressure thing I was talking about earlier is a great tool if you use it properly. It's just, come on. This is not rocket science. We're not doing brain surgery, as they old say. We're building stuff, or we're installing stuff, repairing stuff, but let's just get it done and go on to the next job.
How important is personality? How much do you look into that?
I didn't used to do this, and I do now. I really believe in personality for the type of position you're looking for. And there's free tests online to identify a person's personality. It doesn't take a long time, maybe a couple minutes answering questions. And there's like DISC, DISC. There's other versions. I think actually they're all the same version, but they're all based off of DISC, in my opinion. They just call it different names for probably copyright reasons. But basically, you got a person who is very strong-willed or driven. Then you have one that's very sociable. You have one who's very detail-oriented. And then the fourth one is more of steady as you go. And not that they're always negative, but they see things differently than the opposite of what the driven guy was, and they're always in the little for. So I think it's important to have a little bit of everybody, but they ought to get along too. And I don't mean that the self-driven one they can all be self-driven to an extent. And we all have all four personalities in us. It just depends on how much one personality with another. So that's important to do, because even the self-driven one, the leader of the pack, can be overbearing, and you don't want that either. So I have done this, and I do it now too. I let the team kind of pick their own team members.
Interesting.
Because I don't do that right off the bat, but I trust my group enough to say, okay, you know what's going on. I love what you're all doing now. We just need to be able to do more. Can we get somebody else? Do you know anybody? Yeah, he'd be good for the team, or he'd be a good worker. It's like, okay, let's try him out. Because they'll weed them out real quick. That they just, and I don't, just that's the way it is. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. and they have the same ability. Say, hey, if he's not doing it, then I give the leader of that group, hey, you have a responsibility. You know what my requirements of your department or your group is. And if that person's not holding up their end of the bargain, then cue them on down the line and let's bring another one in.
Yeah,
So
that's
it
always
is,
hard.
it is hard. But what I found was, it's hard. But once that person's gone, the relief
Mm,
of the team members is amazing
yeah.
because they've been thinking it. They just didn't want to do it or was wondering. They were actually sometimes frustrated with me or my team leader. Why'd you wait so long? Well, it ain't like I can just go out and I don't want to go out and just fire somebody. I hiring people is I despise it. It's just I don't enjoy it. That's just not me. But it has to be done. And I think part of my problem is I'm worried about getting somebody wrong. And that's just, it just happens. But as far as that goes, I have seen such even productivity pick up just because I got rid of someone.
Mm,
Like, oh man, I don't have to deal with that anymore. People aren't dreading coming to work or, I don't have to listen to that anymore.
yeah.
And that's not healthy for any business for that matter.
Yeah. I
Now,
remember.
you
Oh, go
can't do
ahead.
that at home necessarily, but anyway.
Yeah, no, yeah, it doesn't work that way. I
Yeah.
remember I worked for a company that used to retrofit buildings to make them more energy efficient. That's what I did back in one of my past lives.
Sure.
And I remember when I was a foreman, I looked at everything differently. Like it's not even the fact that this person maybe is a pain in the butt to work with. It's just the fact that they're not efficient and you can tell that they don't care and they're just here for the paycheck. And
Yep.
now, yeah, that was always a challenge for sure.
Well, team, we're talking about team. Team works together. If you think about it, a good team.
Yeah, supposed to.
And they're supposed to. And if that person's not picking up their weight or just like in football or any of them or any sport, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. The coach has to make a decision.
Yeah.
To pull them off and put somebody else in place. And it happens in sports, that's in business. It just has to happen. And your job is to find that right person, that great cohesion. Everybody works together.
So what advice do you give to someone who's trying to work with their foreman to have difficult conversations? Because I know that's been a big thing for us is team leads who have to give feedback or make hard decisions.
Oh, this one's my favorite.
What do you got?
Throw me under the bus. Seriously, I'll tell them, say, hey, use my name in vain. That damn Chris, he's making me do this. And it's okay.
Mm.
You got big shoulders. And they still don't enjoy it, but it takes the pressure off of them.
It's fair.
They're not, this ain't my fault. It's Chris's fault. They might completely agree with you, but it is what it is. We have to, or I've had this come before where an employee got reprimanded. And I say reprimanded, was talked to. And they come to me and went over the working foreman, said that to working foreman or their boss already kind of talked to them. And I'd say, you know what? You know why they did that? No, because I told them to. They have to do this. Did you realize that they have to hit this quota or this or whatever it is that you have charged that team with, that team leader with? He needs you to perform to get to his. And I tell you what, I made a deal with them. It's either them or you. And they chose you because they're not leaving. So either you have a choice to make a decision to stay and cooperate, or you're going to leave. That's just how simple it can be. And they have to make a decision of you get it back in their court. Here's what has to happen. You can stay and be happy and work and whatever. But over time, if you're not performing as part of a team and your boss is doing what I've told him to do, you can blame me, but you're going to have to do it or go on. So
it's a tough one. It's a tough one. All right.
Tough one.
What would your takeaway be for the audience? What's the number one takeaway when it comes to, is your team holding you back?
Well, look at it from a point of view, make sure they understand what you're talking about and what your expectations are. That's most important, in my opinion. And if you need help in talking to your people about what your expectations are or anything else that you think your team's holding you back on, I'll put a show note in the bottom. Contact me. We'll have a nice consultation and we can make that go away. So everything else, Kevin, appreciate it.
Of course, always. I appreciate
Another
you, my friend.
episode down. We'll talk to you next week. All right.